Fleur-de-lis / Hermione Granger mode. Stage 1. Open book first reading. Read for curiosity. Cyber Law, Module I. Introduction. Bullseye goal of this stage. Not memorizing sections. Not forcing case laws. Not making exam answers yet. The goal is: what is this subject actually trying to tell me? What is the story behind cyber law? We will read it like Hermione opening a new book in the Hogwarts library, understanding the entire landscape before marking important lines. This stage will be divided into 2 parts. Personal Computer Cyber Law, Module I. Introduction. Throughout history, law has adapted whenever human civilization entered a new space. When societies settled on land, property law developed. When commerce expanded, commercial law developed. When nations interacted globally, international law developed. Today humanity increasingly lives, works, communicates, learns, trades, and forms relationships within cyberspace. Cyber law therefore represents something larger than a collection of technology rules. It represents law's attempt to govern a new human environment. Just as earlier generations required laws for physical society, modern society requires laws for digital society. The story of cyber law is therefore not the story of computers. It is the story of law adapting to a new world. The big picture: why does cyber law exist? Imagine law before computers. Most human activities happened in a physical world. House property existed in houses and land. Page-facing up contracts existed on paper. Moneybag money existed through banks and physical transactions. Busts in silhouette communication happened through letters, meetings, and telephones. Traditional laws were designed around this physical world. Then came the digital revolution. Suddenly, money could move without physical exchange. Information could travel across countries within seconds. Businesses could operate without a physical office. Crimes could happen without the criminal being physically present. A new question appeared. If society has entered cyberspace, can old laws alone protect people? The answer was no. And that is where cyber law enters. Cyber law is basically the legal framework created to regulate activities connected with personal computers, globe with meridians internet, mobile phone digital communication, closed lock with key data, computer monitor / electronic transactions. It is the bridge between technology and law. 1. Basics of computer. Before understanding cyber law, we need to understand the machine that created the need for it. A computer is not just a device. It is an electronic system capable of receiving data, processing information, storing information, producing results. The basic cycle. Input, processing, storage, output. Example. You type a message. Black down arrow #. Computer processes the information. Black down arrow #. The data is stored. Black down arrow #. The receiver gets the output. Simple. Yes. But legally, every step creates questions. Who owns the data? Who controls the information? What happens if someone steals it? What happens if someone changes it? These questions are the seeds of cyber law. Seedling. 2. Origin of computers. Now Hermione opens the history chapter. Open book. The origin of computers was not connected with law initially. The earliest computers were created mainly for mathematical calculations, scientific research, military purposes. The development happened gradually. First-generation computers. These computers used vacuum tubes, large physical structures, huge amounts of electricity. They were expensive and limited. Second-generation computers. Vacuum tubes were replaced by transistors. This made computers smaller, faster, more reliable. Third-generation computers. The invention of integrated circuits changed everything. Computers became more efficient. Fourth-generation computers. The invention of microprocessors brought computers into everyday life. Personal computers became possible. Fifth-generation computers. Modern technology focuses on artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced computing systems. Now computers are no longer just calculation machines. They influence economy, education, healthcare, government, communication. And when technology enters every part of life, law must follow. Scales hash. 3. Evolution of computers. The evolution of computers can be understood as a journey. Calculation tool. Black down arrow hash. Information storage device. Black down arrow hash. Communication medium. Black down arrow hash. Global digital network. Black down arrow hash. Artificial intelligence and smart systems. The computer transformed from something humans use into something society depends upon. This dependency created legal challenges. Hermione memory connection. Remember this chain. Computer evolution, digital society, new problems, need for cyber law. This is the entire Module I story. 4. Advantages of computers. Computers changed human society because of their advantages. High voltage sign speed. Computers process huge amounts of information quickly. Example: bank transactions, online payments, government databases. Bullseye accuracy. Computers can perform complex calculations with minimal errors. Floppy disk storage capacity. Millions of records can be stored digitally. Example: medical records, financial records, government information. Globe showing Europe-Africa connectivity. Computers allow people worldwide to communicate instantly. Example: emails, social media, online meetings. Chart with upward trend efficiency. Businesses and governments can perform tasks faster and more economically. But Hermione would underline something here. Every advantage creates a possible legal problem. Large storage. Black right arrow hash data theft. Global connectivity. Black right arrow hash cybercrimes. Fast transactions. Black right arrow hash online fraud. Technology gives power. Law decides how that power should be controlled. 5. Impact of computers on society. Now we move from the machine to humanity. Computers have changed society in almost every field. Banking. Earlier, people visited banks physically. Now, online banking. Digital payments. Internet transactions. Legal issue. Cyber fraud and financial crimes. Books education. Computers created. Online learning. Digital libraries. Virtual classrooms. Legal issue. Copyright infringement and data protection. Hospital healthcare. Computers manage. Patient records. Medical databases. Research information. Legal issue. Privacy of sensitive medical data. Office building business. Businesses use. E-commerce. Digital contracts. Online markets. Legal issue. Electronic transactions and cyber disputes. Classical building hash government. Government's use. Digital identity systems. Online services. Digital records. Legal issue. Protection of citizen information. Perfect. If we're focusing only on Stage 1, read for curiosity. Module I are Part 1, and you want PL level additions that can be inserted at the end of the existing stage, then don't add definitions or extra doctrine. Add deeper Hermione-style reflection sections. Crescent Moon Edition 1 Clock hash the historical journey behind environmental law. One reason environmental law feels like a modern subject is because it is. For much of human history, environmental protection was not a separate branch of law. The primary concerns of legal systems were classical building hash governance, scales hash justice, money bag commerce, house property, globe showing Europe-Africa territory. Nature was often viewed as abundant and self-renewing. Human activities affected the environment, but their scale was limited. The Industrial Revolution changed everything. Factories expanded. Cities grew. Natural resources were extracted on an unprecedented scale. For the first time, Environmental damage became visible at a societal level. Environmental law emerged when humanity realized that environmental harm was no longer a local problem. It had become a legal problem. Crescent Moon Edition 2 Globe showing Europe-Africa the shift from ownership to stewardship. Traditional legal systems often approached nature through the language of ownership. Land could be owned. Forests could be exploited. Resources could be extracted. Modern environmental law introduced a different perspective. Human beings are not merely owners of natural resources. They are also custodians. This idea gradually transformed environmental thinking across the world. The question became, do we own nature, or do we hold it in trust for future generations? Many modern environmental principles originate from this shift in perspective. Crescent Moon Edition 3 Baby, the voice of future generations. Environmental law contains a unique feature rarely found in other legal subjects. Most laws protect existing individuals. Environmental law often protects people who have not yet been born. A decision made today may affect tree forests decades later, water wave rivers generations later, elephant wildlife populations far into the future, baby citizens who do not yet exist. This introduces an unusual legal question. What obligations does the present owe to the future? The search for an answer becomes one of the central themes of environmental jurisprudence. Crescent Moon Edition 4 Scales #Y Environmental problems became legal problems. Not every social problem becomes a legal issue. Environmental degradation became a legal concern because its consequences directly affected human life. Polluted air affects health. Polluted water affects survival. Deforestation affects livelihoods. Loss of biodiversity affects ecological balance. Gradually, courts and legislatures recognized that environmental protection was not merely about protecting trees, rivers, or animals. It was also about protecting human welfare. Thus, environmental protection and human rights began moving closer together. Crescent Moon Edition 5 Hermione's Hidden Theme. As you move through this subject, never view environmental protection and development as enemies. The real challenge of environmental law is discovering how both can coexist. Every principle, every statute, every judicial decision, every environmental institution ultimately attempts to answer a single question. Can humanity continue to progress without destroying the natural systems upon which all progress depends? That question quietly connects the entire subject. These editions feel very much like the best parts of your private international law notes because they introduce white heavy checkmark historical evolution, white heavy checkmark jurisprudential thinking, white heavy checkmark long-term perspective, white heavy checkmark philosophical foundations, white heavy checkmark one unifying theme, without turning stage 1 into stage 2 or stage 3. Warning sign #Hermione's first big observation. Cyber law is not only about hackers. Many students make this mistake. They think cyber law equals cybercrime only. Crossmark incorrect. Cyber law is much wider. It covers heavy checkmark digital rights, heavy checkmark privacy, heavy checkmark electronic commerce, heavy checkmark data protection, heavy checkmark cybercrimes, heavy checkmark online disputes, heavy checkmark regulation of cyberspace. Globe with Meridians. End of Part 1. Module I. The first half of the chapter has answered. How did we reach a world where cyber law became necessary? The chain. Personal computer invention. Black down arrow #. Gear #computer evolution. Black down arrow #. Globe showing Europe-Africa digital society. Black down arrow #. Warning sign #new legal challenges. Black down arrow #. Scales #cyber law. Part 2 of Stage 1 will continue with Globe with Meridians cyberspace. Globe with Meridians need for cyberspace. Globe with Meridians emerging issues in cyberspace. Globe with Meridians violations in cyberspace. Globe with Meridians need for cyber law. And we will complete the whole Module I story before moving to Stage 2. Books. Fleur-de-lis #Hermione Granger Mode. Stage 1. Open book first reading. Read for curiosity. Personal Computer Cyber Law, Module I, Final Connection Part. The Birth of Cyber Law, From Technology to Regulation. Globe with Meridians 6. Cyberspace, the new legal territory. When human beings entered cyberspace, they did not simply create a new technology. They created a new environment of human interaction. In the physical world, a person has a body. A house has a location. A document has a physical form. A crime usually has a visible place. But in cyberspace, a person can exist through a digital identity. A document can exist as electronic data. A transaction can happen without physical movement. A crime can occur without the offender being present at the place of harm. This created a fundamental legal challenge. Can laws created for physical society regulate a society that exists digitally? That question gave birth to cyber law. Scales hash. The 3 layers of cyberspace. Hermione would divide cyberspace into 3 layers because examiners love structured answers. 1. Physical layer computer monitor hash. The actual technological foundation. Computers. Servers. Networks. Routers. Cables. Data centers. Without this layer, cyberspace cannot exist. 2. Logical layer gear hash. The software and systems controlling the physical layer. Operating systems. Applications. Algorithms. Websites. Digital platforms. This is where instructions and processing happen. 3. Social layer busts in silhouette. The human interaction layer. Social media. Online communication. E-commerce. Digital communities. This is where legal relationships develop. Hermione's legal connection. Every layer creates legal questions. Physical layer. Black right arrow hash who owns the infrastructure. Logical layer. Black right arrow hash who controls the software and data. Social layer. Black right arrow hash how are users protected. Cyber law touches all 3. Globe showing Europe Africa 7. Why cyberspace became necessary. At first, the internet looked like a convenience. But gradually, it became essential infrastructure. Modern society depends on cyberspace for money bag digital economy. Businesses today operate through online banking, digital payments, e-commerce, electronic contracts. The marketplace moved from physical shops to digital platforms. Legal concern. How do we regulate online transactions? Classical building hash e-governance. Governments use cyberspace for online applications, digital identity systems, public services. Legal concern. How do we protect citizen information? Books knowledge sharing. The internet allows online education, research databases, digital libraries. Legal concern. How do we balance access with intellectual property rights? Globe with Meridians global communication. A person in India can communicate instantly with someone in another country. Legal concern. Which country's law applies? Warning sign hash 8. Emerging issues in cyberspace. Technology does not wait for law. This is one of the biggest challenges of cyber law. By the time legislation understands one technology, another appears. Hermione writes this in the margin. Technology moves at magical speed. Law moves through parliamentary procedure. Robot face artificial intelligence and legal responsibility. Artificial intelligence has created new questions. If an AI system creates harmful content, spreads misinformation, produces deepfakes, makes an automated decision causing harm, who is responsible? Possible answers. Developer, user, company, platform. This creates the modern debate of technological accountability. Performing arts deepfakes and digital identity. A person's image or voice can now be digitally recreated. Problems. Fake videos. Reputation damage. False information. Identity misuse. Legal challenge. How do we protect personal identity in a world where appearance and voice can be copied? Cryptocurrency and digital assets. Digital currencies create questions regarding ownership, fraud, taxation, regulation, cross-border transactions. Traditional property concepts struggle because digital assets do not always fit physical categories. Detective #dark web and anonymous activities. The Internet contains hidden spaces where users may operate anonymously. Challenges: difficult investigation, hidden identities, cross-border crime. Law enforcement faces the problem: finding the person behind the screen. 9. Violations in cyberspace, the legal problem. Now Hermione changes perspective. Technology itself is neutral. The problem begins when humans misuse it. Cyber violations can be understood according to the victim. Bust in silhouette against individuals. The individual is the most vulnerable participant in cyberspace. Examples: cyber stalking, repeated online monitoring or unwanted digital contact. Cyber harassment, using digital platforms to threaten, abuse, or intimidate. Identity theft, using another person's digital identity without permission. Cyber defamation, publishing false statements online damaging someone's reputation. Office building against institutions. Businesses and organizations store huge amounts of information. Attacks include hacking, unauthorized access to computer systems, data theft, stealing confidential information, phishing attacks, tricking users into revealing passwords, banking details, personal information, ransomware, blocking access to data and demanding payment. Classical building against the state. Cyber attacks can threaten national security. Examples: cyber terrorism, attacking critical systems. Cyber espionage, stealing confidential government information. Attacks on critical infrastructure, such as energy systems, defense networks, communication systems. Scales #10. Why cyber law became necessary. Now the final question of Module I. Why could traditional law not handle cyberspace completely? Because traditional laws were created for a physical world. Problem 1. Electronic records. Old legal systems were designed around paper documents. But cyberspace created digital files, electronic signatures, online contracts. Law needed to recognize electronic existence. Problem 2. Digital crimes. Traditional offenses often required physical acts. Cyber crimes could happen through data manipulation, unauthorized access, digital interference. New offenses were needed. Problem 3. Jurisdiction. A cybercriminal may sit in one country while harming someone in another. Traditional territorial concepts became complicated. Classical building the solution. Information Technology Act, 2000. India introduced the IT Act, 2000 to create a legal framework for the digital age. Its major objectives. 1. Recognition of electronic transactions. Giving legal validity to electronic records, digital signatures, e-contracts. 2. Regulation of cyber activities. Creating rules for computer misuse, unauthorized access, digital offenses. 3. Supporting digital governance. Helping government and businesses function electronically. Hermione's final reading map, Module I. Remember the story, not isolated points. Personal computer development. Black down arrow #. Globe with Meridian's creation of cyberspace. Black down arrow #. Office building digital society. Black down arrow #. Warning sign # new forms of violations. Black down arrow #. Scales # failure of traditional legal concepts. Black down arrow #. Scroll need for cyber law. Black down arrow #. Classical building # Information Technology Act, 2000. Stage 1, Module I completed. You now understand. Heavy check mark what computers changed. Heavy check mark what cyberspace means. Heavy check mark why society depends on digital space. Heavy check mark what problems emerged. Heavy check mark why cyber law became necessary. Next we enter Fleur-de-lis Stage 2, second reading. Connect concepts within the module. Here Hermione stops reading like a beginner and starts building the legal architecture. The question changes from, what is cyber law? To, how do all these concepts connect to create a legal system? Book. Fleur-de-lis Cyber Law. Module I. Introduction. Stage 2. Reading for Understanding. Part 1. Globe with Meridians. The big picture. Why does cyber law exist? Before opening individual topics, Hermione would first ask, what problem is this branch of law trying to solve? Every law is born because society changes. When humans moved from house physical society, black down arrow hash, factory industrial society, black down arrow hash, personal computer digital society, the nature of human activity changed. Earlier, people stored information on paper. Communication happened through letters and physical meetings. Money moved through banks and physical documents. Crimes required physical presence. But now, information exists as digital data. Communication travels instantly across borders. Money moves electronically. Crimes can happen without the criminal being physically present. The law had to evolve. Cyber law is therefore not a completely separate universe. It is the extension of traditional law into the digital environment. A simple Hermione formula. Technology changes, human behavior changes, new legal problems, cyber law develops. Personal computer 1. Basics of computer. Before understanding cyber law, we need to understand the machine that created the problem. Because no computer equals no cyberspace equals no cyber offenses equals no cyber law. A computer is an electronic device that accepts data as input, processes information according to instructions, stores information, produces output. The basic functioning follows. Input, processing, storage, output. Example. You type a message. Keyboard input. Black down arrow hash. Computer processes the information. Black down arrow hash. Data is stored digitally. Black down arrow hash. Message appears on screen, reaches receiver. The four fundamental components of a computer. Hermione would not just memorize hardware and software. She would understand the relationship. 1. Hardware. Hardware means the physical components of a computer that can be touched. Examples. CPU. Keyboard. Monitor. Hard disk. Printer. Network devices. Think. Hardware equals body of the computer. 2. Software. Software means the programs and instructions that tell hardware what to do. Examples. Operating systems. Applications. Security programs. Think. Software equals brain of the computer. Without software, hardware is just an inactive machine. 3. Data. Data is the raw information processed by computers. Examples. Personal details. Photos. Financial records. Government documents. Modern cyber law focuses heavily on data because data has become a valuable digital asset. Earlier, gold was valuable. Then, money became valuable. Now, information has become one of the most valuable resources. 4. Network. A network connects computers and allows communication. Examples. Local Area Network, LAN. Wide Area Network, WAN. Internet. The Internet is essentially the world's largest network. Hermione's legal connection. Why do lawyers need computer basics? Because cybercrimes target these exact components. For example, hardware attack. Black right arrow destroying or damaging computer systems. Software attack. Black right arrow installing malware or altering programs. Data attack. Black right arrow stealing confidential information. Network attack. Black right arrow breaking into communication systems. So computer knowledge becomes the foundation of cyber law. Seedling 2. Origin of computer technology. The computer did not appear suddenly. Its development happened through stages. Hermione would see it as a historical evolution. Classical building first stage, mechanical calculation. Early humans created tools to perform calculations. Example: abacus. Purpose: to reduce human calculation errors. Gear second stage, mechanical computers. Scientists started creating machines capable of performing complex calculations. These machines were large and limited. They were mainly used for scientific calculations, military purposes, research. High-voltage sine third stage, electronic computers. The invention of electronic computers transformed society. Early computers were huge in size, expensive, limited in function. They occupied entire rooms. Computer monitor fourth stage, personal computers. Computers became smaller and available to ordinary people. This changed education, business, communication. Computing moved from institutions into homes. Globe with meridians fifth stage, internet-based computing. The computer was no longer an isolated machine. Computers became connected. This created cyberspace. The computer evolved from a calculating machine, black down arrow hash, an information storage system, black down arrow hash, a communication device, black down arrow hash, a global connection platform. Link symbol: the important legal connection. The history of computers explains the birth of cyber law. Because when computers were only calculation machines, black right arrow hash traditional laws were enough. But when computers became banking systems, communication platforms, data storage centers, business infrastructure, new legal problems appeared. Globe with meridians 3. Evolution of computer technology and its impact on law. The evolution of computers can be understood as a movement